Hello everybody, my name is Morgan, aka Big Time, and I'm here to bring you your weekly Valorant Roundup. Quick disclaimer before I begin, because of my living situation, you might see or hear a bird in the background. This is what he looks like. His name's Maverick, he's fantastic, but he can be quite loud sometimes, so I apologise in advance. Let's get straight into it. This first roundup is definitely going to be an interesting one because we just had the biggest Valorant tournament ever in Champions. We saw some amazing Valorant and it really was the great end to a fantastic year. However, there's only one place we can realistically start, and that's the Brazilian cam bug. So to give some context for all this, we need to go back a little further though, to the Sentinels vs Furia game. Sentinels were 12-4 ahead at one point, but Furia were gaining momentum and really managing to string some rounds together. Then this happened.
Trying to get it done. But what they're doing is they're dwindling the rounds where they can actually try real strats, and they're becoming more and more readable on those rounds because it's unlikely they're going to continue.
The admins called for a technical timeout to assess what they'd just seen. The Sentinels players said that they didn't really think it was a bug, they'd seen this jump before and it was a skill jump. So Shazam went to the toilet and then the game quickly resumed. However, the momentum was gone for Furia and Sentinels managed to close out the game. Now at the time, the viewers didn't have all the context for this timeout. Many thought it was just called for Shazam to go to the toilet and that this had killed the momentum. The Brazilian fans are understandably annoyed, but some took it way too far, even sending death threats to the North American players. And it goes without saying that this is never okay. No matter how angry you are, death threats are never justified. However, a majority of viewers felt like the Brazilians were certainly unlucky and hard done to. Who knows what would have happened if the game would have carried on as it was. This leads us into the next day where Ascend play Vivo Kid. Heading into the tournament, Kid were considered the top Brazilian team for sure, but still big underdogs to the Giants of Ascend. After a close back and forth series, Kid eventually won 2-1, taking the final map, Buysse. The Brazilian players are understandably elated, but not for long. It was only the next morning when Riot announced that they were going to investigate this game further as they found a problem. Zhao had reportedly used a banned camera on Buysse. So this is the view you get from the camera. This texture on the right hand side is bugged so that you can see the players coming out of A main whilst they can't see the camera. After a little deliberation, Riot decided that Ascend would be given the win. They found that the bug was used 6 times, so they gave Ascend 6 rounds, plus an extra bonus round to make up for the economic impact. This brought Ascend to the magic 13, and they now had a 2-1 win over the Brazilians. The community was understandably confused by this decision, and there was a lot of talk saying that just handing Ascend a win really wasn't the fairest way to go about it. Many felt like Kid were the better team even without the bug, so just scrapping their win was really harsh. Riot don't like this kind of backlash and quickly went back to the drawing board. They instead came up with another solution. The final map would be replayed, but Ascend would be given a 7-0 head start. While most people felt like this was somewhat more fair, other pros like Safe spoke out saying that this ruling was inconsistent with Riot's rulings in the past. But still, it was final. This replay ended with a 13-10 win to Ascend, but Kid made it closer than anybody had expected. After this, the Brazilians end up losing 2-0 to X10, which seemed crazy considering the fantastic performances they'd just put up. Some blame all this hassle and drama, but regardless, X10 were clearly the better team on the day. It didn't really end here either, as Zoms kept poking the bear and was flexing his earnings left, right and centre. Regardless of your opinion on this whole situation, it's hard not to feel for Vivo Kid a little bit. Of course, they used a bugged cam, which isn't right, but I felt like they had a lot more left to give in this tournament, and hopefully they can bounce back in 2022. The next thing I want to speak about from this tournament was one of the biggest storylines of the whole thing, and that's the underdogs. For me, this tournament was the most significant one yet for the minor regions. Going into it, not many people gave them a chance. We even made a tier list on our own podcast where we only placed one team not from NA or EU in the top 2 tiers. There's a bias of course being from EU, but no one would have predicted how well these lesser followed teams would do. And for me, no team showed this better than Crew. There's been no doubt for a while that they were the strongest team from the LATAM region, but nobody really felt like that meant a lot. We'd seen them play in other international tournaments before, but with very little success. But right now I want to walk you through their run at Champions in a little bit more detail. Their tournament started in probably the worst way they could have pictured. The groups are drawn and Crew's luck already seemed to have run out. They landed in Group B surrounded by proven talent. There were the confident fan favourites Sentinels, an incredible looking Team Liquid who were on a real run of form, and the aggressive headhunters from Furia. Needless to say, no one really gave them a chance at getting out of this group. Because of this, their opening game of the tournament was against Team Liquid. These two teams had met in the past, but it had always been a pretty simple victory for the Europeans. Unfortunately for Crew, this time was no different, with Liquid handing them a crushing 0-2 defeat by winning 13-5 and 13-8. and at this point everyone's hopes of LATAM success had immediately dropped again. Fast forward a few days and they're having to prepare for their second match, this time against Furia. Once again, I don't think they were really the favourites heading into this one. Furia had just taken a map from a very strong looking Sentinels, so everybody thought this would be pretty simple for Furia. However, Crew has a history of knocking out these Brazilian teams, and they've managed to show some signs of life, winning 2-1 and clinging onto their tournament life. Sure, they'd hung on for now, but here's where things got really tricky. They had to play Sentinels in an elimination match. Now, don't get me wrong, the Sentinels didn't look quite the same as the one we saw in Reykjavik, but they still seem more than capable of handling Crew. Things only seemed to look worse as they lost the first map Fracture, which was their own pick. They're now facing down Sentinels on their pick, Haven, and it looked more likely than ever that this would be their last international game for the year. But Crew said no. They went on to upset Sentinels 2-1, winning with a reverse sweep, and this was a combination of fantastic aim, brilliant strats, and textbook LATAM aggression. This was no doubt the biggest win of their lives so far. They'd just sent home one of the favourites to win the whole thing. But even this wasn't good enough for some people. There was a lot of talk about how NA teams don't practice hard enough, they only do an hour or two a day or something, and that this was a huge Sentinels choke. It had nothing really to do with Crew being good. Okay, so they'd fluked their way through the groups, but meh, NA are bad or whatever. So surely this run was going to end against a surprisingly strong looking Fnatic. They have a very deep strat book, and Durka's aim easily rivals the likes of Kesnet. Surely this was the end for them. Nope, they took the fight to Fnatic, winning a close map 1 on Haven in overtime. This was Crew's pick, so it really was a vital win. Icebox, the next map, was a complete write-off. They got beat 13-6, but this was somewhat expected. I mean, Fnatic have always looked really good here, and this just left Split. So I think going into this, Crew must have been quietly confident. They sent home Sentinels on this map, which is a really big confidence boost. Once again, we saw Crew's trademark aggressive double duelist, the Raze and the Jet playing in your face, all-out style that just flattened the defensively minded Fnatic. It was a clash of two polar opposite approaches to the game, and Crew came out on top. Now they're in the semi-finals. One of the top 4 teams in the world, and this is where people really started to believe. Myself included. I'd even predicted a 2-1 win to Crew, as I felt like their fast style would be very tricky for Gambit to handle. Luckily, this game lived up to expectations, and it was everything we'd hoped for. It started out pretty tame. Gambit won their pick Breeze 13-8, and Crew responded by winning their pick Ascent 13-7. This left it all down to Bind. Now this for me ended up being one of the most nail-biting, intense matches of the whole tournament. I'll talk you through it. So to start, Crew jump out to a fantastic lead, getting themselves 7-1 ahead. Now against any other team, that's probably enough to feel safe, but not against Gambit. They have a history of big comebacks, even coming back from 12-4 down against Vikings earlier on in the tournament. You can just never count them out. Gambit shows some signs of life towards the end of the half, making it 8-4, which is still pretty good for Crew. They even win the pistol round and the conversion afterwards, making it 10-4. But unfortunately, the Masters 3 champions just refused to die. A spectacular second half from Gambit saw this game go into overtime. It literally couldn't be any closer. This overtime that followed was immense. We saw unreal plays, multi-kills, and so much heart from both teams. But when all was said and done, Gambit walked away victorious with an 18-6 win on Bind. That's 34 total rounds. There's no doubt Crew would have been upset by this. They were literally one round away from being in the final. But there's also no doubt they can walk away with their heads held high. They've shown the power of these smaller regions and proved that they simply can't be underestimated. I really do hope this team can stick together heading into 2022, because I for one can't wait to see them compete together again. I also want to talk briefly about Ascend. The underdogs ultimately put up a great show, but for me, Ascend were worthy winners. They really had to wade through all that Brazil drama at the start, none of which was their fault, and they showed us that they were more than just CNED and friends. Everyone on that team could totally pull their weight when they needed to. They showed us just how far they'd come in over a year, turning from no-namers into champions. There's no doubt they had a really tough run as well. They had to fight through Envy, Secret, Liquid and Gambit to claim their throne, and that's something probably only they could pull off. Ascend are more than worthy champions in my eyes, and with news of the team re-signing in 2022, they'll look to continue their dominance. All in all, it's been a fantastic few weeks for Valorant. Going forward as we head into the 2022 League-based system, you can expect weekly roundups just like this, where I'll guide you through the biggest headlines and stories in Valorant for that week. I'll also be bringing you plenty more roster updates, analysis videos, and everything else Valorant related that you could possibly imagine. If you haven't already, please check out our website at absolutelegends.gg, I'll put it down at the bottom here. We've got news, matches, guides, rankings, so please do come take a look around. You can also follow us on Twitter and TikTok if you search up Absolute Legends for a boatload more content and insights into Valorant at the pro level. But for now, thanks for watching and I'll see you guys next time.